Joining me around the table today, four influential Republicans from all corners of the country. Mia Love, mayor of Saratoga Springs, Utah. She upped her profile with that passionate speech at last summer's Republican National Convention, but still lost a congressional race in November. Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. His state is now a battleground after years in the solid Republican category. Former Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez. He just founded a super PAC called Republicans for Immigration Reform and was an advisor to Mitt Romney's 2012 campaign. And finally, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Many of you remember that he survived a recall election over the summer. So quite the panel. Thank you all for joining me this morning. Do you sense, since you are all more or less outside Washington, that there is a split between how governors, mayors, folks that have particular causes look at Republicans in Washington and how they look at the Republican Party?
Well, I think there's no doubt about it. And I think there's a lot of pessimism, unfortunately, a lot of Republicans and conservatives here in our nation's capital. But you get out around the country. I mean, Bob and I like to make this point a lot. Even though the president won a re-election in November, there are now 30 states across America that have Republican governors. And when you think about reform, welfare reform in the past, tax reform, it happened at the state level and at the local level with governors and mayors who really put forward that cause. So while we need to change the climate here in Washington, we're changing it every day in our state house.
Sure, but at the same time, I can look around this table and say you won first governor ever to win a recall bid, or a recall call. And you were in a very conservative state, in a conservative spot. Right. You are in a conservative state. So you all, were kind of fine, and you still lost. Republicans lost Wisconsin, Republicans lost Virginia, and Republicans lost the Latino vote. So there is a huge disconnect here, not just for you, but for voters, right? Right.
Well, just one last point, and I'll let the rest of the panel say this as well, but even in Wisconsin, good example, the president carried Wisconsin just like every Democrat has since 1984. The same year I not only won a recall election by a higher percentage than 2 years ago, same time we took the state Senate back, we added to our numbers in the state assembly. You see that now about half the states in America have Republican majorities, more than half have Republican governors. I think that's a reflection of where local leaders in our states and our local governments who are Republicans, who are conservatives, are being relevant, they're being optimistic, they're being courageous. That's what we need more of in Washington.
Why are you popular in Virginia and you couldn't pull Mitt Romney over the finish line?
Is that the softball you promised?
That's right.
The president won by 7 points back in 2009, and I won by 18 the next year. I think the problem is in the larger...
And Mitt Romney lost by?
By 2. So in the larger turnout elections, that casual voter that only tunes in every 2 or 4 years, that is just listening from 30,000 feet, really taking care of their family and their business, that's where we're not connecting. I think they don't understand the conservative message, and we're not, and they don't like us. And so we've got to do a lot better job. And I think the key is what governors are doing. You heard Scott. We're getting results. We're actually passing budgets, balancing budgets, reducing debt and deficit, and solving the common sense everyday things they talk about, like roads, bridges, schools. We're making that better, and that's why they're voting for us at the state level.
I think the word conservative doesn't do us enough justice, because it tends to imply that we want the status quo, that we're stuck to the past, and that we don't like change. This is a country of change. This is what makes us so great. And I think that's where we need to be strategically consistent. On immigration, how can we be a party of growth, of opportunity, of free enterprise, of prosperity, but not be the party of immigration? So we do need strategic consistency. It's a lot more than just, execution on the ground. I think we've got to look up and see what our strategy really is.
And Mayor, when you look at Washington, do you see Washington Republicans? Do you see you?
No, actually. I think when you think about what's happening in Washington, we're having a hard time getting to people and their real struggles, getting our message out. Now remember, conservative values is more about people and less about Washington. And right now, Washington, I agree with Governor Jindal when he says you've got two different parties. You've got a party that wants to expand government. You've got another party that wants to control government. The president, I believe, is president today not because of what he does, but because of what he says. Because people feel like they can relate to him. People feel like that he can relate to them and that he understands, even though he's not really doing anything to help the people on the ground. They feel like he understands them. And on a local level, it's easier to connect to people. It's easier to get to understand these individual struggles and to be able to fix to fix the problem on a local level.
Is it also at some level what you're talking about? And Senator Rand Paul talked to the Cincinnati Enquirer recently, and he said this: we're going to have to be a little hands-off on some of these issues. He's talking about social issues, and get people into the party. There is this, and he in particular said, I don't think that we can attract young people where we always look like we're ready to go to war. He worries about the abortion issue. He worries about a number of these social issues that seem to turn voters away from the Republican Party. Do you agree?
Well, and I think it goes even beyond just those social issues. I think one of the things I mentioned this weekend is relevance. One of the things I think is the difference between Washington Republicans and those in states and at local governments is we're talking about things that are relevant to people's lives. We need to be realistic about our challenges, no doubt, but we need to be optimistic about our solutions, and I think that's the key ingredient missing here. We're talking about debt ceilings and fiscal cliffs and things like that. Most people I talk to, and I think a lot of us talk about their kids' future. They talk about their neighbor out of work. They talk about concerns they have with schools and transportation, things like that. There's relevant things that I think nationally Republicans aren't connecting on. We can, because we need to be a party of growth and of opportunity. We need to be optimistic, relevant, and courageous, and if we do, we're going to win national elections again.
No, Governor, social issues have been important to you as a politician, as a person. Can you stay the Republican Party and say, look, we understand we have disagreements, come on into the party anyway for our fiscal views?
Sure. I think these issues of life and family and marriage kind of define who you are as people. People will differ on that, but if they know you care about the biggest things, roads, schools, quality of life, access to the American dream, more opportunity, they'll give you a chance. I think Scott's point about proving that conservative government gets good results and the things that people care about, that's our road back, and doing it with a smile as happy warriors, people will buy into our ideas.
Ronald Reagan approach. I need to just stand by a minute. We're going to have more with our panel when we return. We are back with Governor Bob McDonnell, Mayor Mia Love, Carlos Gutierrez, and Governor Scott Walker. Is it possible for outside Republicans to beat up on inside Republicans? And let's say that Governor Christie was frustrated because he wasn't getting the aid he thought he needed for Hurricane Sandy relief. But he's been this was an anti-Republican. He was mad at John Boehner at this point. Is there any way that you all can recreate the party by running against your fellow Republicans in Washington? You know,
Republicans aren't always going to agree with each other. We don't have to change the debate. We should be debating. We should be talking. But we have to just unite on our principles of limited government. You have to understand, as a mayor, it's pretty simple for me. I ask myself 3 questions anytime I make a new policy decision, anytime I make a decision about anything. Is it affordable? Is it sustainable? Is it my job? And I think that we would unite a lot better if we all asked ourselves those questions. Where we get into trouble is when we start dividing and start figuring out, somebody uses opportunity for political gain here, or somebody uses an opportunity for something else. We have to start uniting on our principles and start communicating that to the American people. We would do so much better.
Carlos, I want to put up some of the exit polls, and basically what they show is anyone from 18 to 39, President Obama won all the young people. Women, 55%. President Obama won women. Latinos, 71%. And yet the Republican Party doesn't want to be the party that goes after segments of society. How do you attract Latinos? How do you attract young people without sort of catering?
Well,
in a way Republicans say they don't want to.
In terms of Latinos, in terms of Asians, in terms of immigrants, I think we fell into the trap of looking at the numbers too literally. So, look, Latinos want jobs, they want education, they want health care, and immigration was like number 5 or number 6. But what they sense is that we don't welcome them. And we have to be the party that celebrates immigration. Every time the president talks about business, there's always a but in the sentence. And when you hear some Republicans talk about immigration, there's always a but in the sentence. People sense that. People, they have a gut feel for that. We've got to make people feel welcome.
So just kind of going around the table, is the problem the messengers? Is the problem the message? Is the problem policy?
Well, I think it's a combination. The core principles we have are right. I think part of the problem is exactly what the Secretary was just talking about, is we've got to talk, as I mentioned before, in terms of relevance. And part of the relevance doesn't only means how you talk about it, it's where you're willing to go. I think for too long, too many Republican candidates only went to certain parts of America to talk about their message. We have a message for immigrants. We have a message for small business owners. We have a message for college kids just coming out of college. It's about opportunity. It's about optimism. It's a message that they need to hear. And right now, I think in many cases when they look at Republicans in Washington, they hear the loyal opposition, naysayers, people who they view as just being opposed to anything this president does. We need to pick out a few issues where we can agree and work with the president and Democrats on and work together on that, and then find other issues where on principle we're still with the American people and say, no, this is the alternative and we've got a better one.
Easier said than done. There is some talk. Paul Ryan most recently said he thinks the president is trying to delegitimize the Republican Party. Is that true?
I don't know what the president's thinking on that, but listen, Democrats and Republicans believe strongly in ideas that are different, and they believe that their pathway is the right one to expand the American dream. These battles are going to continue, but I think showing that conservatism gets results and that liberalism has regularly failed is our best chance. And the best example I give is young voters. The things that they want when they graduate from college, they want a job, they want to have less student debt, and they want to have less share of the American debt. Well, if you believe in that when you're a young person, then we should explain why these Republican ideas of job creation, reform in higher education to create less student loans, and reducing the American debt. We're the ones talking about that. Young people, please vote for us. We got to do a better job with them.
30 seconds, so 15 here.
Yes, I think part of the problem is that people sense or they think that if you're a Republican, you believe in 15 different things. But it's like a Chinese menu, but all those things you believe in, and it's not true. I know pro-life Republicans, I know pro-choice Republicans.
Let's remember that the GOP was started on ending slavery. That's how they got together. And
Absolutely.
When it comes to immigration, we are not doing our job on a federal level to open the front door and close the back door. We've created a problem that no one in Washington wants to address, and they have to address it.
Mayor Mia Love, Governor Bob McDonnell, Carlos Gutierrez, Governor Walker, thank you all very much for joining us this morning.